What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I've got for you a 3-part series condensed into just 1 hour-ish long episode for you to enjoy. This is the Noisy Gob saga. It sort of transcends subreddits in a way, starting on Idontworkherelady, but it's also a story of revenge. It includes an extremely entitled person and has a very sad ending. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the entirety of the Noisy Gob saga. Do you know who I am? And you're fired until they realize their terrible mistake. Firstly, this didn't happen to me. I was with the person when they received a phone call about this issue. Then he explained it all to me. He's not on Reddit, so I'm sharing it. It is priceless. All names have been changed to protect personal and company identities. Let's start with explaining what listed buildings means. This is important to the story. In the UK, there is a system for preserving ancient and important buildings. If a building has historical importance, it is known as a listed building, and the rules about how it's developed, maintained, and improved are very strict. I need to be vague about the work involved, otherwise it's too easy to identify the parties involved. So, my friend David is skilled in a very niche area of construction. He repairs and renovates buildings using a very old construction method that hasn't been common for several centuries. All his work is on conservation projects and listed buildings. Work was required on a Grade 1 listed property. The overall building work was being done by the main contractor, ACC Limited. One part of the work is very specialised. The contractor's managers didn't know anyone who did it, so the architect gave them a list of qualified people. The contractors chose my friend because he had the earliest availability. 5 days into the work, the owner of ACC Limited, the main contractor company, arrived on site. He was throwing his weight around and being a noisy gob. David's words. That is how he will be referred to for the duration of this story. David was just doing his job and he ignored him. Noisy Gob told one of his carpenters to get him a coffee. The carpenter disappeared. Noisy Gob continued wondering and gobbing off about delays costing him a fortune. 15 minutes after the carpenter had disappeared, the Noisy Gob asked my friend a question. "Where is that frickin' chippy with my coffee?" A chippy is a carpenter. David replied, "I don't know." "Well, go and find out. I'm only here for this job," pointing to the walls. "I don't work for ACC Limited." "I don't give an F whether you're an employer or a subcontractor. You still work for me. Now go and find my frickin' coffee." "Firstly," David replied, "I don't appreciate being talked to like that. And secondly, my contract with you is to do these walls, nothing more. I'm definitely not a gopher." "Oh, you don't appreciate being talked to like that, do you? Well, which subcontractor do you work for?" "None. I'm self-employed. It's just me." "A freaking day labourer? And you've got the nerve to talk like that? Do you know who I am?" "Yep." "Well, you're freaking fired. Get off the freaking site now." "Okay, well, put it in writing," David said. "Oh, F off. Just get off the freaking site." David then pulled his phone out and started recording. "Okay, I'll go. I just want proof you told me to go." Noisy Gob grabbed David's hand holding the phone and screamed into the phone, "Get off the site, you freaking idiot. You're fired. If you're still here in 10 freaking minutes, I'll have you freaking thrown out." "Cool, no problem," Dave said. He picked up all his kit and walked away. As he was leaving, the contractor's site manager passed him, ironically with a coffee for the boss, and with a smile said, "You leaving early, Dave? Frickin' part-timers." "No, your boss just fired me. Our contract is ended." "Sorry, mate," David replied. "Wait, no. Let me sort this out. Wait, please wait," the site manager replied. But David left. The site manager was losing his mind because he knew something that Noisy Gob didn't. Only 7 people in the UK are qualified to do this work. They all have a waiting list, and David had been the only one available. By the time David was home, he had 12 missed calls. That was Thursday. 2 working days missed so far. He said he'll go back, but only if he gets paid for the extra days and has a genuine apology in person from the boss. I met my friend when he was getting a call from the site manager saying the boss apologizes but is out of the country, so can't apologize face to face. David also told me he phoned the other specialists to warn them, but they'd all been phoned on Friday, begging them to do the job. Nobody took the work. They're all booked solid. David also phoned the architect to warn him. Situations like this, some unscrupulous contractors try to bodge the job and fake the work. David is going to stick to his guns. Pay for all missed days, plus a face-to-face apology. He's sure he'll get it. I've said I'll pay anything to watch the face-to-face apology. Okay, let's get into the first of 10 updates to this story. Remember, 10 updates. They're not all going to be in this episode, but make sure you stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the future episodes where we go through all 10 updates. The site manager phoned to say he was told by Noisy Gob to threaten legal action if David doesn't finish the job. The site manager was very embarrassed and apologetic. David reminded him he didn't leave and has proof that he was fired. The site manager phoned again to say Noisy Gob will apologize face-to-face on Friday. Can David start tomorrow? David said no. Following the threat of legal action, the conditions are different. 1. Face-to-face apology before work restarts. 2. Added pay for wasted days. 3. Payment of full contract value up front before the work starts. And 4. This all must happen by Thursday. That is the last day he can start and still expect to finish before his next booking. If he also works the weekends, he has just enough time. I asked him, why isn't he charging a huge extra amount for the guy being such an idiot? But he said it doesn't really look good if you take advantage of companies when they're under time pressure. It's not the done thing. It seems that one of my friends is an 18th century gentleman. Now, a slight correction here. I misunderstood David when he said only 7 others do the work. He actually meant only 7 other businesses apart from his. They are small businesses though, so he says it's probably about 20 people total who can do it. Still a small number, but not as comically small as 7. Sorry for misleading you all about the number. Not really misled me at all, to be fair. That's still like 20 total humans in the entirety of the UK who could do this work. It's not that many more than 7. I just feel like surely Noisy Gob should know that David is one of, as I said, 21 people that can do this, and therefore they should be acting like really carefully to ensure that the job gets done. You got to leave your ego and say, okay, maybe I don't like what's going on here, or I'm a bit of an idiot, but we need this job to get done, and David is the only one who can do it properly. Now, obviously, you'd have to be self-aware enough to be able to understand that. And Noisy Gob isn't self-aware, so that would never happen. And if you were self-aware, then you wouldn't be in this situation anyway. So a bit of a oxymoron, I suppose. But at least it makes for a good story for us. So let's get into the second update and see what happens next. All right, now for the second update. Unfortunately, it seems there will be no apology. David has discovered that the site manager was blamed for not making Noisy Gob aware of the situation beforehand and was fired. David contacted the operations director for ACC Limited, Noisy Gob's number 2, and informed them that an apology is no longer required as he will not be returning to the job. The ops director apologized for everything and offered to renegotiate the money very generously. David told him that he'd only considered going back to the job as a personal favor to the original site manager, and since he isn't there, he feels no obligation to return. The ops director said he'll get back to David, but didn't say why. David's in such a strong position here. If you're one of 21 people in the whole of the UK that can do this work, and you haven't been respected, and they're all busy, oh my goodness, you just have everyone in the palm of your hands. So fair play to him for acting as he's doing, but I just don't understand why Noisy Gob didn't realise how precious this situation is, and that David is the only one that can do this. Anyway, let's get back into it. I asked why he didn't say, give him his job back or I won't come back. Yeah, fair question. David said, well, Noisy Gob is actually too petty and weak to be told what to do by a craftsman. It will have to be the company's idea for the site manager to come back. If I tell them to bring him back, it just won't happen. David says the site manager is great at his job, but is only 4 years from retirement, so it's not easy to find a job at 61. I've decided I like David even more than I did 3 days ago. Now for the third update. It's 2 AM here. We've just got back from the pub. David got a call while we were out from the sacked site manager. David updated the architect on the situation this afternoon. The architect contacted the sacked site manager to tell him about a company who needed a site manager. The sacked site manager phoned David just before 9 PM. I had to sit through the phone call, only hearing one side. I must have looked childishly excited, like I got a butt full of sparrows. Then David filled me in. The site manager rang to thank him and to find out his favourite drink so he can send him a bottle. He hasn't got the new job yet, but he's seeing them on Friday. Apparently, the architect's recommendation carries some weight, so he's optimistic. David refused at first. "I didn't get you a job, the architect did." But the site manager said, "You set all this in motion and told the architect I'd been fired. Because of you, I never need to deal with that obnoxious pillock ever again." David wasn't specific about who the obnoxious pillock was. We'll have to guess. David said his drink is Cardew Gold Reserve. He said he will accept a bottle only if A, the site manager gets the new job, and B, if the site manager will come over and drink the Cardew with David. It looks like the handsome scribe who did the enormously difficult, time-consuming job of skillfully writing this saga down on Reddit isn't included in the whiskey consumption. As David poetically put it, "Pee off, you idiot, you can buy your own frickin' drink." All good news, hopefully, except that nobody gets to see that idiot, Noisy Gob, eat trash when he has to apologise. I was so looking forward to that. Also, some additional information. David and the fired site manager know each other outside of work. They're each members of charity organisations in the same town. 2 different groups, but they work together a lot. The site manager is in Rotary Club, and David is in Round Table. I don't think he's a knight, but you never know. Okay, so it takes 5 years to become just competent and at least 9 years to be a master craftsman. I don't know if master is an actual legit term there because OP has said the job needs at least 1 master present. Maybe that is a term, but 9 years is insane. It really is. However, there are other jobs out there that do require similar levels of sort of training in terms of time. I'm thinking to be a doctor, anything in medicine really, or architects in the UK I know is a 7-year training course. That does involve some years actually in industry, but still I think it's a 7-year long degree. But yeah, 9 years to be a master craftsman. And again, I go back to the fact that David is just one of 21 people in the country that could do this, in the whole of the UK that could do this. I get it. It probably would give away who David was if you said what he does. But I mean, we can kind of infer that it's a pretty specialized job to do with, obviously, historic buildings. Okay, now on to the 4th update. Operations Director for ACC Limited phoned David to suggest that they take the site manager back and generously renegotiate the money. David says, "Well, you've missed the boat. There's no way he can finish the job on his own before he starts his next job. There's an absolute minimum of 11 days work left if everything goes without a hitch. David's next job starts 4th of November. Only 10 days left if he works both weekends. It's too late. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when Noisy Gob is told." Now, many of you are asking what David does. Unfortunately, if I said what it was, it is so identifying that I might as well give you his real name and his address. Sorry. The reason there are very few of these people is that it takes 5 years to become just competent and at least 9 years to be a master craftsman. The jobs need at least 1 master present when the work is done. Okay, now for update 5. Bad news. The fired site manager didn't get the other job. He met the new company, but they're not taking him on. The reasons aren't clear. David is meeting him on Sunday to discuss it. I can tell that David feels like trash about it, even though it's not his fault. The site manager says he's going to take action for unfair dismissal. I thought this was going to be a win-win-win, but I suppose life isn't like that. Update 6. News about the sacked site manager. The situation isn't as bad as we first thought. I think we misunderstood what happened on Friday. David talked to him yesterday. The company he saw on Friday are not employing him in the normal way. That part was correct, but they have offered him a fixed-term contract for 18 months on a distribution centre build. It's not perfect, but on the bright side, it's slightly better paid than ACC. It's only 18 months, but that's better than nothing. There's also the chance that the new company might extend the contract if another project comes in. Update 7. David has heard they're getting a Bulgarian to come over to do the job. David was grinning when he told me. He thinks he knows what will happen. There's a similar but different technique that was used on some 19th century buildings in Sofia. David thinks that the guy will use that technique. It looks similar, but 2 very important materials are different. David's decided to wait. He plans to let the Bulgarian finish the job and get paid. Then, David is going to suggest to the planning department and the client that they check the 2 components. Unless the Bulgarian knows the 17th century English method, he will have used the wrong materials. It would mean ripping it out and starting again. They are incredibly strict with this type of work. I shouldn't want this so much, but I really hope this happens. I am a petty man. Remember, this is a listed building, and as someone who lives in the UK, I'm from London, I know the regulations around these sort of things are extremely strict. Stuff has to be done to the letter. Now, many people are asking, when will David know if the Bulgarian has done the job right? David might know fairly soon, since there are very few suppliers of one of the materials. If the Bulgarian contacts them, David will be told. In David's words, it's a tiny incestuous part of the industry and they gossip like old women. Correction, we all gossip like old women. If he doesn't go there, David is leaving it alone until he's told that the work is finished and the Bulgarian is paid. He doesn't want to put the guy's money at risk. In David's words, I don't want the Bulgarian to drag his butt over here and go home empty-handed just because I can't wait to drop silly balls in the trash. The man's got a living to earn. Oh wait. And just in case of confusion, Silly Balls is the same person as Noisy Gob. It should take the Bulgarian about 3 weeks to finish the job unless he works weekends. David knows plenty of people on site and a few at ACC head office, so he will know when the job is finished. So, I've got to sit on my hands for 3 to 4 weeks and pretend that I'm not an excited 7-year-old girl peeing her pants about Christmas coming. Update 8. David has been told that the Bulgarian got straight to it and started work. He's had materials delivered, but from an ordinary building supplier. The stuff he needs to do the job properly is too bulky for him to bring with him, even if they sell it in Bulgaria. He hasn't ordered it from the UK supplier. There are 3, but only one has enough for this job because they got it in for David. So unless it's coming by road and ferry, he's not using the right materials. David wouldn't allow it to go unreported, even if he wasn't annoyed about Noisy Gob. He's got a genuine passion for looking after all these buildings that he works on, and he's a purist when it comes to historical accuracy. So, now I have to hold my water for 3 to 4 weeks. David says that if he's using more modern materials, he might finish sooner. 3 weeks is the time it takes if you stay in the 17th century. I've turned into a bit of a weirdo about this job. When I phoned David earlier on a pretext, he realised I was after info again, and he said, F me, do you want me to fit a body cam so you can see and hear everything as it happens? Well, if it's not too much trouble and you can link me into your phone calls, that'd be nice, I said. David, after laughing, added, You freaking idiot. Is it okay if I cover the lens when I'm pooing and having sex with my wife? Well, personally, I don't do those two things at the same time, but whatever floats your boat, David. You're telling me to do them separately? When are you having sex with my wife? Oh, well, right after she's cleaned all the trash off the sheets from doing you. Some of us are fussy. Oh, pee off. You're an uptight clean freak, David says. Then he hangs up. Wow, what a phone call. No goodbye, no see you soon. English manners aren't what they used to be. I know it doesn't look like it, but honestly, I do have a life. I promise. That last little interaction between David and OP, that's like the most British interaction ever. Like, you hit your mate with a little jab, they come back a little bit stronger, you go back a little bit stronger, all joking of course, but it can get quite dark, which I find extremely funny. I mean, like, the last few lines there are great, and it's exactly how I would talk to my mates. It may not be like an American thing, but in the UK, between good friends, that conversation and the style of it is extremely common, and I love it. Okay then, here is update 9. Lots of news. The Bulgarian finished the job and went home 2 weeks ago. According to the people who met him, Stefan, the Bulgarian, was a good guy and a very hard worker. He did 12-hour days and weekends so he could cut the cost of staying in the UK. Based on what he learned about Stefan, David is happy that he waited until Stefan got paid before he reported the work. David was already fairly sure that Stefan was not doing the job correctly. He checked the 3 firms who are the only UK suppliers of the most obscure material involved in the job, and none said they'd had an order for the site. Of course, it was possible that Stefan imported, but nobody on site had seen an overseas material order. So, as planned, David contacted the local authority planning department, the client and the architect, and an organisation called Historic England. He explained his concerns and the easiest, least intrusive way of testing. Then he waited for them to look into it. It only took a couple of days, but I can honestly say that I've never been so anxious or felt so invested in something that is none of my peeing business. First report came from the architect. Wrong method used. Wrong method using the wrong materials. He'd used a 19th century Bulgarian technique, not the 17th century English that is demanded. The architect was enormously annoyed. David said he's never heard the architect use bad language before, but this phone call was blue. Apparently, Noisy Gob is called, quote, that ignorant freaking D-womble by the architect. David asked me what a D-womble is. I had no idea. Suggestions welcome, and as you can imagine, guys, I am censoring that. I think we all know what that means. The architect said he was going to contact the local authority because he doesn't want them to think this is anything to do with him. Most of the rest came to David second or third hand. He knows some of the staff from ACC. I asked if it was difficult to get them to tell him anything. He said they can't pick up the phone fast enough. The local authority planning officers visited the site and inspected the work. They told the contractor that the work was entirely wrong and must be cleared and done properly. Then it got interesting. The inspectors had a look around the site. They found an issue. I can't be specific about this because it would be too easy to identify the buildings involved. The contractor has destroyed part of the building. There was an internal feature that didn't look particularly important, but is part of the roof structure. They removed it and put in a much better modern support. But they're not allowed to. Neither the project manager or the new site manager or staff knew the importance. Guess who ordered it to be replaced? Cheap, quick option instead of repaired. Slow, expensive option. Of course, it was Noisy Gob. It's a criminal offense to destroy anything on this type of property. Jail time type of crime. Even if they don't go to jail, it's a massive fine. So now everybody in that company is pointing fingers at each other and claiming no responsibility. Noisy Gob has claimed that he didn't give the order to take out the internal parts of the roof structure. The project manager has email evidence that he did. On Tuesday the 19th, the client ordered all of the contractor staff off of the site. They're having everything examined. It's almost certain they're firing the contractor. They've issued instructions for bids from new contractors. They'll also sue the contractor for the cost of repairing and replacing everything they've done wrong. The architect's estimate was £800,000. The local authority planning department wrote to the contractor outlining what they've done wrong and advising them of their plans to inspect and the possibility of prosecution. According to the staff, Noisy Gob disappeared to the lawyers on the day the letter arrived. David had 3 different people from ACC phone him within an hour when the news of the letter circulated around the staff. So now we're waiting for a few things. Number 1, the client's inspection. If that confirms that ACC have damaged the site, then the client has the right to fire the contractor. ACC doesn't get paid and they have a massive repair bill. 2, local authority inspection by conservation experts. If they've destroyed features in the property, the local authority will prosecute ACC as a company and the person who ordered it. David is very unhappy because the internal structure that's been destroyed can't be replaced. In his words, that wood has been sitting there doing its job for 400 years until that freaking idiot comes into the picture. Then it's gone, and that's it. Never again. He seems genuinely sad. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, there's a reason, I'm sure, that he does this job. It's a very particular job, and I think to do well at it, or even to do it at all, you'd have to be very, very passionate about these buildings and how they're built and, yeah, the historic nature behind them. So for something that's been there for, 4 centuries to be destroyed, I'd be gutted too. I'm betting that Noisy Gob is wishing he got his own coffee on that day last month. Oh my goodness me, I almost forgot. That's where this all stemmed from. David just getting annoyed at Noisy Gob. Wow. Okay, now before we get into the final update, update 10 of this story, first of all, a correction and apology from OP. The letter to ACC, not their real name, did not threaten to prosecute actually. It only made them aware of the planning department's intention to send a specialist to inspect the building, and in particular the area affected by the change. Apparently, prosecution, if it happens, takes forever. My sincere apologies for misleading you all. Like everyone else, I was too keen to pick up my pitchfork and believe the worst. A combination of wishful thinking and Chinese whispers meant that by the time the story got to David, it was much more serious and advanced. Now, Noisy Gob might actually be prosecuted, but if it happens, it's more likely to be 6 months than 6 days. That is the second correction since I started. I promise to try and be a little bit more conscientious on future updates. I'm not sure about that. I feel like these are pretty minor corrections, and I wouldn't go out of my way to say I'm sorry, but thank you anyway, I suppose, OP. My fault, not David's, OP continues. David warned me, everything that goes in your ears doesn't have to spill straight out of your mouth. You're too keen to feed the masses. They might think you're farting rainbows right now, but that won't last if you make a pig's ear of the info. And he's right. As usual. As frickin' usual. As annoyingly frickin' usual. And then some requested information. A few people have asked what happened to the original site manager who was fired, but I couldn't answer until tonight. Me, David, the site manager, and 2 others met in the pub. He definitely has the new job, subject to fidelity insurance checks, which he'll pass. He starts on the 9th of February. He got paid off in lieu of notice by ACC. It's standard practice for firing. His contract gave 3 months notice and he was owed 12 holiday vacation days, so they paid him just over 3.5 months pay in one lump. He also gets to keep the car until March. He said, "When he fired me, I was shaking like a pooing dog, but the wife reminded me that I could take my pension early, and how much I hate that company, and especially hate that dodgy pillock." Then the architect called me about the distribution centre job and I stopped worrying. He's got Christmas off and he's starting the new job on a slightly higher salary. The only downside is that the job is only guaranteed for 18 months. There's a strong possibility that the company will keep him after that if they have work, it's just not definite. Initially, he was planning to take Noisy Gob to an industrial tribunal for unfair dismissal. Now he can't because he isn't going to suffer financially. He said, "Obviously I'm glad I'm not losing money, but I was looking forward to beating that wazzock in court." Right now, he is using the extra time to build a better sleigh and some reindeer. Yep, a sleigh. Oh, what? Really? An actual sleigh? It's to go on the back of a truck. His group walk around the area dressed as elves and snowmen with Father Christmas on the sleigh, playing Christmas carols at window-rattling volume, collecting donations for charity. I've been roped into it many times. Fair enough, that sounds pretty cool. He brought David the whiskey he promised. David said he shouldn't, but the site manager said, "Yorkshiremen keep their word, even to a shower of soft shandy-sipping southerners like you lot. Besides, I'm not risking breaking this lucky streak. Even the whiskey was half price." Use that if you want. Both me and David pointed at him simultaneously and said, "A real Yorkshire man." For the unaware, Yorkshire folk have a reputation for 2 things: very straight talking and being careful with their money. So, after having a go at him for suggesting that I was a southerner, we left the pub and went to site manager's garage so we could drink the whiskey and admire his work on the sleigh. If I tell you all how good Cardew Gold Reserve tastes, will they send me some freebies? Also, I am Welsh, by the way. Okay, not a southerner. That is why you've probably noticed some poor grammar. Anyway, I'm waffling now because I'm full of whiskey. It's 1 a.m, so it's past my bedtime. Bye for now. Okay, well, I suppose it's a good thing that Noisy Gob is getting the justice that he deserves. It's a shame that it's not as immediate as we'd hoped or maybe expected. And you know, these sort of things where it's like, okay, this might happen in 6 months' time, or yeah, this might happen in the future. I always feel like that would just fade away and people will forget, or something else will come up, or there'll be some way around it. So I don't really know if this will happen long term, sadly. Whereas if it was short term, I'd be getting excited. But yeah, I don't know. It's a shame that nothing's happening right now. I mean, it's great for the site manager, of course. I can't imagine that. It'd be very scary knowing that you're going to retire pretty soon and that you're of the age where it's going to be challenging to get another job because you're quite close to retirement. And there is obviously a little bit of prejudice towards older people who are close to retirement when it comes to hiring a new hire. But yeah, very good that he has some security. And then going back to Stefan, the Bulgarian, got to say fair play to David, because it wasn't really in his interest at all to let Stefan do that work. But for Stefan's sake, it was. He got his money, he got out of there, which is great. David didn't have to do that. He could have been quicker and said, "No, look, this is going to be done in the wrong way. I'll stop this now." Or he could have very quickly, when the work had started, been like, "No, stop this. This is wrong." you aren't using the correct products, whatever. But he let it happen for Stefan's sake. And I quite like that, even though it probably wasn't a good thing for the long-term future of the building, right? But yeah, look, if you've got someone that doesn't really care and is destroying 400-year-old structural bits of a listed historic building, they should not be in that role anyway, I'm sorry. And it's a shame that that has happened in the first place. All right, then, let's get into update 10. I think there might be some karmic justice on its way. Noisy Gob has been interviewed under caution. It doesn't mean they're definitely taking legal action against him, but it means they are preparing for the possibility. They also did the same with the project manager, and they're going to do it with the fired site manager next week. The site manager is confident he has nothing to worry about. The decision to remove the roof support sections was made after he was fired. He said he was confident that if he'd been there at the time of the illegal alteration, the Noisy Gob would have tried to pass responsibility. Oh my goodness, that would have been scary. Or, as the site manager put it, that cowardly, slope-shouldered turd would have pooped all over me to save his own skin. Don't worry, I'm also not going to continue the Yorkshire accent. The question is, can turds actually poop themselves? Who knows? Luckily, the project manager has proof in the form of an email that Noisy Gob ordered the work. Noisy Gob tried to persuade and bribe him not to pass it on to the people investigating this for the local authority planning department. When that didn't work, he tried to threaten him. That backfired because not only did the project manager ignore the threats, but he told the investigators that Noisy Gob told him to lose the email. I have a lawyer friend who tells me that interfering with a witness and destruction of evidence are offences in themselves. Noisy Gob won't stop digging himself a deeper hole. I'm going to be so disappointed if he gets away without legal consequences. He is definitely suffering though. That's the big news of the week. And without further ado, let's get in to another update, which is just fantastic news. The title is Noisy Gob has been fired. David announced it yesterday after he was told by no less than 4 different employees of ACC. He said they couldn't wait to tell him. Then the conversation went like this. How is that freaking possible? I asked. How does the owner get fired? Did he walk up to a mirror and say, "You're as much use as Anne Frank's drum kit? You're fired"? Wow. How have I never heard that before, by the way? Goodness me. David said, "Nope. You know he inherited the business from his dad and uncle? Yeah. You know his brother and cousin own a slice each? Yeah. Well, their combined share is over 50%. So they fired him. According to Louise, the accounts manager, they are peeing their pants. They were happy to leave Noisy Gob in charge as long as the money rolled in, but now their golden goose looks very sick. They are terrified that losing this contract and the penalties and fines will finish the business. So they're appealing to the client/property owner to take ACC back to finish the contract. Part of that involves convincing the building owner that Noisy Gob will never have anything to do with the company. Obviously, they're throwing Noisy Gob under the bus. Louise said there was screaming and threats of violence from Noisy Gob when they fired him. He had to be escorted off the premises. He's been phoning employees, asking questions, and seems surprised when people don't want to help him. According to Louise, he actually thinks the employees like him and want to be loyal to him. She said the man is in cloud cuckoo land. I said, he's going to be so annoyed. I wish I could see that numpty's face as it was happening. Yeah, me too. David said, it's nothing that the scrote doesn't deserve. There is something else, but I can't tell you because I promised the person who told me that I wouldn't tell anyone yet. Oh, you freaking tease. How important is it? Well, it's huge. Life-changing for the subject. I wish I could tell you because it nearly gave me a hard-on. Frickin' heck, it must be big if it can get that ugly appendage to do anything except hang there like the last chicken in the shop. Your wife must have been pleased. I'm not sure about reading this out, but we're going to carry on. What drama, David said. She thinks I should tell her this thing I was told in confidence. She thinks I should be able to tell her everything because we're married. I explained it's not my secret to share. I was hoping I'd get, I appreciate you have integrity, dear husband. But no, I've got an angry missus who thinks I'm an idiot. By the way, Louise and her job title have been changed to protect the innocent. It seems like it will be a couple of months before he can give me this awesome news, so I don't want any of you holding your breath. The client/building owner has done their inspection. Two areas are unacceptable, as expected. The damaged area and the part that David should have done but was done by Stefan. They're very unhappy. When listed buildings are damaged, the local authority normally assumes it's the owner taking shortcuts. But in this case, the owner is a crusty old institution dedicated to preserving important buildings. They're not used to being accused of anything shady, so they did not like having to prove they had nothing to do with the damage to the building. David said, "It looks like they've written off ACC because they've issued a type of request for tenders to several other contractors who specialise in conservation." He then spilled a lot of jargon I neither understood or remembered. In simple English, they've asked a few companies to quote a price for the job, OP said. "Yeah, that's a very simplistic way of describing it," David replied, "but I don't have the time or the crayons to explain it to you, so okay, let's say they're asking for prices for the job." Crayons there is mental. "You condescending Dumbo." So, I was hoping this story would build up to a crescendo with Noisy Gob suffering something horrible, but it's just sort of fizzled out with a whimper while we wait to see what legal action is going to be taken. Real life is inconveniently slow. At least it is great that Noisy Gob has been fired, and yeah, the owner of a company being fired is brilliant. Didn't even realise his brothers or cousins or whatever were involved. That is great information. Okay, so on the 21st of January 2020, we got this. "Hi, this is Mark, OP's wife. The idiot asked me to apologise to the internet for his silence. He was hurt in a car accident on the 7th of January. We're sure he's going to make a full recovery, but he won't be online for a while. I said, it's just Reddit, but he's an obsessive lunatic about not letting people down, so I promised I would add Reddit to the list. So, here I am telling all the people that he doesn't know why he hasn't finished telling them something they're probably not reading anyway." Then, on the 3rd of February, a couple of weeks later, we got this. "Hi, Mark's wife again. There were over 200 direct messages. Thank you all for your comments and for wishing him well. I've read them all to him. I'm going to answer the 3 most common questions. Number 1, what happened to Mark? He was stationary in his car in a queue to leave the motorway when a large lorry drove straight into the back of him. His car was crushed between that lorry and the lorry in front of Mark. He has several broken bones. Nose and left orbital and cheekbone, left radius and ulnar, forearm, 4 bones in his left hand, right tibia and fibula, lower leg, 4 ribs, one of which punctured his left lung. There is some damage to the central vision of his left eye, which we hope is temporary. He has some damage to the tendons in his right hand, which need more surgery. Lots of cuts. A total of 112 stitches. He looks like a mess, but there is a chance that he might recover without any permanent damage. If it was me, I wouldn't cope, but he has always been as tough as nails for as long as I've known him. When I first got to the hospital and he was lying there, covered in blood and wires and tubes, and he couldn't speak properly, I went to pieces. He had me laughing within minutes. He's always been good at knowing the right thing to say. The thing that is bothering him most right now is not being able to use his hands. Number 2, when will he update the story? Well, it could be a while. I could ask the friend he has, called David, for an update, but I definitely can't tell a story like Mark can. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think Mark is the funniest man I've ever met. When he and David get started, I laugh so much I can hardly breathe. For now, I've told him to forget about everything except getting well. But if it starts to bother him, I've told him I'll do some secretary roleplay and he can dictate the story to me. I know he will finish it. He always finishes what he starts. I wish I had 1/10 of his self-discipline. And 3, a few have asked if they can send him cards or gifts or money to help with medical bills or lost earnings. Thank you so much for offering, but it's not necessary. We're in the UK, so thankfully healthcare is free. He doesn't want anyone's money. If anyone feels the need to do something, there's a charity that we've supported for a long time called Macmillan Cancer Support. You can donate at the Macmillan website. They're always grateful for any amount, big or small. Okay, so pretty terrible news about Mark being in hospital. I'm pretty devastated to say that this story actually gets a lot worse from now on. Very sadly, the next post is tragic. Okay, now moving forward to the 22nd of May 2020. This username, u/mostlygruntled, belonged to my husband Mark. He wrote the story about his friend David and a business owner he called Noisy Gob. Mark had been updating the story until he was involved in a car accident in January. At that time, he asked me to let everyone know that he was injured and that he would update the story when he had recovered. Unfortunately, just over a week after my last comment, Mark passed away. Everyone thought he was recovering, but without warning, he suddenly became unconscious and died very quickly. The staff tried everything they could to save him, but he had suffered a ruptured aorta. They said it had probably been damaged during the accident and isn't uncommon in car crashes. I'm sorry I didn't update this sooner, but to be honest, I completely forgot about this website. It was only when I came back to read Mark's words again that I saw how many people were waiting for Mark to finish the story. I don't know how many people will see this update, but if you know anyone who was waiting for Mark to reply, would you please pass this news to them? Thank you. Thank you to the hundreds of people who left get well messages for Mark. I'm so sorry that I ignored you all for so long, but I've been dazed for the last 3 months. Mark would most definitely have disapproved of my leaving everyone in limbo and would have told me off. Also, many thanks to the people who made donations to Macmillan Cancer Support, although it seems strange to see money donated in the name of mostly Gruntled. And finally, thank you to the moderators for helping me by explaining how I could inform everyone. Wow. Absolutely devastating news. And 2 days later, Mark's wife added, I can't thank you all enough for the lovely words and virtual hugs that I've seen over the last day. I've cried for hours. It's hard to explain what good crying is when you lose someone. Anyone who's lost a loved one will probably understand. Because of your posts and messages, most of the day has been good crying. Your words have made me think about all of Mark's wonderful qualities and all the reasons I loved him so much. I started writing the update and then abandoned it about 8 times before finally finding some bravery, and I'm so glad I did it. Thank you again to the moderators for the last little push I needed. It's also made me realise that I want to do one more thing that Mark would have wanted. He always finished what he started. I'm going to speak to his friends and find out what has happened. I know some of it already, but I'll try to get myself up to date with everyone's outcomes. I warn you in advance, it will not be like Mark's writing, it will just be the facts. I haven't got an ounce of Mark's flair for telling a story, but it's obvious from the comments that a lot of people were waiting for a conclusion. The plain facts will have to do. Please, be forgiving. I'm going to speak to the person he called David, who has been an absolute rock for me this year. Hopefully, he'll be able to tell me everything. I'll enter the update as soon as I can. Thank you all so much, you have no idea how much this has helped. Then the next day, Mark's wife added, Yesterday I was having a better day, mainly because of what you all wrote. Today, I woke up angry and I can't shake it. Today is a public holiday in England, and I keep thinking about what we'd be doing if Mark was here. He never wasted a holiday. I'm angry because I have lost the best person I've ever known in my life just because some selfish idiot couldn't wait to reply to a text message. I can't get over the stupidity and the unfairness. He'll go to prison, but only for a few years, and nothing will bring my Mark back. Sorry people, I just needed to vent. Please, 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 don't use your phone when you're driving, and don't tolerate it if you see others doing it. It's just brutal, isn't it? To lose somebody like that, in an accident like that is so easily avoidable. Someone that you would have been with for the rest of your life and who was the most amazing person, like your person, just gone. In a second, really, in one crazy incident just because a lorry driver was looking at their phone. It's insane sometimes how cruel life can be. And I think it's a good reminder, to be fair, for the majority of us, like how quickly this can all be over in literally the blink of an eye. Okay, next update came on the 3rd of June 2020. I would like to mention 2 things. Firstly, may I thank everyone who has made a comment. The beautiful things you have all said about Mark have lifted my spirits. I didn't imagine they would, which is why it took so long to inform you that Mark had passed away, but you did help. Even when what you said was so touching that I broke down, which I have done dozens of times reading the wonderful words. Secondly, may I apologise for not yet responding to every comment. On some days, I feel I could talk about Mark all day. On others, I can't even think about him without going to pieces. If I've not responded to your individual comment, it's not that I haven't read it, I've read all of them. It's just that I've been in a bad place some of the time and I can't reply. I'll eventually reply to everyone, just as I did, very slowly, with the cards at the time of his funeral and since. I didn't think I'd get through them all. It seemed that I was climbing a mountain that wouldn't stop growing, but I eventually replied to them all. All 322 of them. Finishing what I start is one of several good habits I caught from Mark. I just want to hear him call me Cariad again. Cariad isn't my name, it's a Welsh word for love. Wow, 322 cards. That sounds insane. I mean, that just proves, well, not proves, but shows how loved Mark was. 322 cards. Goodness me. Okay, let's jump forward now to the 27th of July, 2020, 3:10 a.m. Wow, Mark's wife says. I haven't been online for a few days, and suddenly there are hundreds of messages. I can't sleep again, and it occurred to me that I could update what happened to each of the people Mark had written about. It's just the facts. It won't have Mark's humour or style, just plain information, but it's the best I can do, and it's better than nothing. Site manager. He started as planned in the new position on a building project for a distribution centre. Mark had already said what site manager and David were unhappy about. Being on a fixed 18-month contract as a self-employed person was a disadvantage compared to being an employee. But that was before Corona. After the virus hit, most of the employees were laid off. Some were furloughed, but because of the contract, the company had to keep paying the site manager in full. What he thought was a bad thing turned out to be his saviour. Noisy Gob. The last that David could tell me about Noisy Gob was that he has been forced to divest his share of the business, so he no longer owns a third. He had to sign a personal liability agreement regarding his assets in the event of total liabilities being greater than the value of the company. The way I understand that is that if, for example, the total bills for Noisy Gob's mistakes are more than the company can pay, then Noisy Gob must pay for the extra, even if that means he loses his house. He had to give up his share of the business because they couldn't keep trading if he was involved. He needs them to keep going to pay the lawyers. He hasn't been charged with a crime yet, but now it's certain that he will. They take a long time investigating and preparing before they charge him. Something to do with needing to be ready to go to court once he's charged. It also came to light that he had a warning for similar but much more minor damage to a listed building in 2011. David has been told that during the investigation, some irregularities were discovered by the local authority and were referred to HMRC, the taxman, and Noisy is also being investigated for VAT fraud. One of the earliest comments on Mark's story said, "Expensive cup of coffee." That's an understatement if I've ever seen one. The big news was going to be about Noisy Gob and the SA/R word of one of the PAs in the ACC offices in 2017, and harassment of other staff too. The R word/assault did happen, but it wasn't Noisy Gob. It was a former finance director. Stories about harassment of female staff have not developed and turned out to be just rumour. Wow. Okay, moving on to David then, finally. Financially and work-wise, he is probably one of the few people who were not affected by COVID-19. Because he works on his own and has no social distancing issues, he's continued almost as usual. He said work is easier because, in his words, the usual plonkers are not there to trip on my equipment or stick plank ends into my finished work. Personally, David is not doing so well. Outside of family, David took Mark's death worse than anybody. He tries not to show it in front of me. When he's with me, he's a rock. He has saved me from myself. He's one of 3 people where I feel I can really let go about Mark. Or so I thought. I spoke to David's wife last week, and she was so sweet and sympathetic about it, but she had to tell me to hold back a little with David. He looks strong to me, but his wife says it's shattering him. I knew that him and Mark were good friends. She says he's taken Mark's death very badly. She says in all their marriage, she's only seen him cry once when their dog died. She didn't see him cry when his parents passed. She says he seems lost now and he's cried quite a few times. The worst thing to hear is that the time he cries is after he's been to see me. I feel terrible. It's obvious that he was grieving, but I didn't know I was putting so much on him. I'm going to be more careful and stop using him to vent all my pain. I wish she'd spoken sooner. Or maybe I should have been aware of it instead of being so selfishly focused on my own grief. Okay, that's a bit too much. I feel like there's no possible positive outcome from this. It's good that everyone is now aware of the situation though. Anyway, that's as much as I know about the updates. They're waiting to see what Noisy gets charged with. If he's guilty of damage to listed buildings, he might go to prison. If he's guilty of VAT fraud, he'll almost definitely go to prison. Either way, the fine will be 6 figures. David said he wondered if he'd like prison coffee. He's got an evil sense of humor. Okay, then a couple of hours later at 5:30 a.m, we got the following. When I came online earlier, there were notifications for 512 private messages and comments. I don't know where to start. If you've written, please, please, please don't think I'm ungrateful because I haven't replied. At 3:10 a.m, I felt able to write, so I did the update. Right now, I don't think I can do it. I've been looking at the video of our wedding. I thought it would make me feel better, but I feel like I've been knocked over by a bus. Mark's speech has crushed me. He talked about when we met and when he went back to the house he shared with other Royal Marines. One of them asked Mark, "What's the joke?" Then again, "You're grinning about something. Come on, what's so funny?" Mark said he couldn't and wouldn't explain it to them. He just couldn't stop smiling every time he thought about our date. He said he felt like that every time he thought about me. On our wedding day, it made me smile and brought a tear to my eyes, but this morning it broke me. I don't think the pain is getting easier. I think it's getting worse. I can't stand it. I feel it all through me and I can't stop it. All I can think lately is that if I can't have him back, I wish I'd been in the car with him. He was an atheist and he always said, "This is all you get, so don't dare waste any of it." So he wouldn't approve of me hurting myself, so I don't think I can. It's just so hard to carry on with this pain. I just want it to stop. I'm so sorry to carry on like this. I daren't say this to people I know because they worry, but writing here is like screaming into a diary. My apologies to everyone. I'll try and get a hold on things, but I miss him so much and I can't stop it hurting. I don't know what to do. Nos da cariad. And then finally, on the 31st of August 2020, we got one final update / post, I suppose, from Mark's wife. Since I last updated this submission, I've replied to quite a lot of messages. Hundreds, but I didn't get through them all. I can't read or see any more of the messages in chat, but the screen says I still have 92 waiting. If you didn't get an answer, you're in the 92. It was our anniversary yesterday, 30th of August. I was dreading it, but then when it came, it was sort of empathy. I watched our wedding video. I cried. I answered some messages. Halfway through one message, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that all the happiness I will ever have in my life has already happened and finished. Everything I try to do in the future is just going to be overwritten with Mark should be here, but he isn't. Everything from here until I die is just going to be existence, just breathing and watching the days pass. It seems so pointless without Mark. I don't know if I can write anymore. Thank you to everyone who offered their help. You are lovely people. Hold on to the people you love like you might lose them tomorrow. Don't do what I did and assume you can carry on in your own little heavenly bubble forever. Some careless idiot can snap out everything you love in the blink of an eye, leaving you with nothing ahead of you. Bye. Wow, not really too much I can add to that. I sort of said it as we were going through, but just, yeah, tragic. And a great reminder, I suppose, that life is so short and it can just change in a second. Just a horrible thing to go through. Like, I can't even imagine. And I'm sure there are people watching this, listening to this, that have gone through something similar, lost their partner, lost their husband, wife in a pretty sudden way, or even not in a sudden way. It doesn't really matter, does it? Just like, I can't think of anything worse than that. Don't really know what to say, but yeah, extremely sad. I hope you guys don't mind that I brought you the entirety of this story. I thought it was important. Pretty amazing that all those hundreds of people on Reddit got involved, got in contact with Mark's wife, offering support, and donated to charity as well. I will leave a link to Macmillan in the description of this video. So if you do want to donate in Mark's name, go ahead. It's pretty cool that people are donating and saying, I'm donating on behalf of you / mostly gruntled. I can imagine the people at Macmillan are like, what the flip is mostly gruntled? But yeah, obviously that was Mark's Reddit username. And yeah, don't really know how to outro this one, but that is it. I hope you enjoyed, I suppose. I don't know. Not every story can have a happy ending, I suppose. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll leave it there and I'll catch you on the next one.